Here you go. All right, so let's get started. So last week we went over some new terms and so forth, and we're covering the things that I introduced to you for chapter 2 that was not in your book. So we're going to continue that and so forth. Let me see here. And when you've been using these Microsoft programs forever and they still pop up and say, do you want a tutorial? I'm like, no, I'm good. All right, so here we go. All right, so we were on this last time and we were covering this, and I kind of rushed through it because of the situation that we were finding ourselves in. I guess good luck to those people taking SAT today. Let's see, what do I want? Oh, I want chat up in case you guys ask me anything. All right, so put that right here. So these were mostly just terms that I introduced to you in chapter 2 that you need to be familiar with because you might get questions on them. So make sure you're familiar with, and just like last time and all the other ones, we're using the definitions directly from Google. I might tell you to, whatever about them. But for the most part, we use those definitions. All right. The one part of this I covered and I went over a little bit quickly is the special group types and techniques, which we've been talking about all through chapter 2. The differences and adaptation to the modern work meetings. All right. So to do that, we got to go back. Got to do the back. And there it is. There it is working. All right. Oh, by the way, this is my setup. This is my fancy so forth. Just FYI, this is this is my hardcover. And if I wanted to impress, there's the degrees. Oh, the degrees are right over there. Just FYI, they're in like dollar store frames. Anyway, not dollar store, but like cheapest frames I could find. All right, so anyways, enough of that. So special group types and techniques. So preview of chapter. All right, so we started here, and while we were going through it, we talked about the different groups we found ourselves in, the different types of groups and so forth. We were covering these things here, and when we got into groupthink, we talked about how we sometimes find ourselves in situations where we just want to get through it. And so we just tell ourselves, okay, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And so when we talk about the techniques to overcome it, one of the things you have to do is identify what is groupthink. We talked about that in class. What we have to identify that groupthink does occur. And sometimes you have to be that person. There's a famous play, 12 Angry Men, about jurors on a jury, where essentially everyone was pretty much going to convict this person, and it took one person to change everything. And so, the most important thing about groupthink is that to combat it, a technique to combat it is just to identify that it's happening. All right. We talk about the importance of setting up norms. That's another part of the technique and so forth. Identifying interdependence, and of course the different roles. This is when we get into the idea of the different special groups and so forth. When we have the different roles assigned, or not assigned, but they become evident. And we're talking about the tasks and personal roles where you want this to occur. And so forth. So this is what we're talking about when we get to the slide here, the different group types and techniques and the differences in adapting in the modern work meeting. Most of the time, it's just identifying, because chapter 1 and section 1 of this part of the class was defining communication, and then defining group communication and small group communication. Chapter 2 By the way, the pages will be put up on Monday as well. Just FYI, pages will be put up as well for the midterm. And then chapter 2 was defining the basic components and techniques and so forth in the groups, the basics. And so identifying the basics and dealing with it is part of the thing, is part of the situation. We kind of went over networks. We defined that, and that also goes into group types. You know, like some networks are set up for the task, some are set up for innovation, and then the social networks, of course. But in this setting, it's just defining the basics. Any questions on this idea or concept? Again, giving away the freebies for your group discussion materials, just giving it away, just doling it out. This is where you can talk about, okay, defining the basics and so forth. Some of you, just give you some quick feedback, overall quick feedback on the group discussions. Some of you just needed to define what you were saying in the group. And what I mean by that is some of you just threw out the word, but didn't really go over it. And your example wasn't really helping define it. So you don't have to actually say the definition. You know, you don't have to say interpersonal or intrapersonal, and then it is when. You don't have to do. You could. I mean, it fills up a sentence requirement, but sometimes you just follow it up is like, oh, interpersonal. You know, when somebody, it is the communication we find in one's head, or when you communicate internally in your own personal thoughts. The communications with yourself, stuff like that. And, or you say something like, I realized in the moment I was, and by the way, I'm using intrapersonal, not because anybody wrote on it and I wanted to cover it. The reason why I'm using intrapersonal, it's one of those terms that I introduced to you that honestly, you'll probably never hear of again, unless you use it yourself. So that's why I'm using intrapersonal. So interpersonal, at that moment, I discovered that I was participating in interpersonal. The thoughts that I was bouncing around in my head was a discussion I was having in the moment, something like that. Just a little bit more definition. That's it. And then using the terms. Some of you didn't use the terms. Some of you should have used the terms more and so forth, just little tidbits, but the most important thing to do is get it out of the way and get it done. So I just wanted to give that group discussion feedback while I'm taking this moment. Any questions on that? No, we're good. All right. I'm trying to figure out so someone sent me a face and I'm trying to figure it out. All right. So that is an important part right there. So again, freebies giving out for the reflection outline and the group discussion. Understanding the basics is how you adapt, and knowing the different basics, and like when we talked about roles, the differences, different roles and so forth, and stuff of that nature. We talked about the interdependence, and the most important part of it, the less interdependence, is cross-cultural. Is it because some of you are seeing this thing right here? That's my photo projects. These shells are my photo projects, what I'm working on right now. So that's what those are. All right. Let's see. See self-image, adaptation, and group image. We kind of rushed through that as well. But I said I used self-image to define the idea of group image because it's one and the same. How you see yourself as yourself happens in the same manner when it comes to the group. If you guys think you're going to be dysfunctional, guess what? You're going to be dysfunctional. If you say you guys can't get along, guess what? You're not going to get along. And so Group image is an important part of it. Your book talks about it and introduces the idea. I just wanted to give an official term for it and set it up to where you can understand it. It's like when you use an analogy in a speech or a paper where you use the analogy to explain, in this case, the analogy is self-image and how we see ourselves in self-image, how it relates to another area, which is the group image. All right. So that's one of the reasons why I did it. Let's see. All right. And so we covered, and the other part we hastily went through is the different definitions and so forth for misinformation, disinformation, disruption, and deception. And so it's important to note these terms in the modern group setting. I have, okay. All right, someone's just messaging me. I'm just reading. All right, so so what I mean by that is in our modern society, we're having an issue with misinformation and disinformation. I was watching a report and I thought it would be interested, and it was like the problem of free speech. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to talk about how people are now taking advantage of the free speech element to push false information out and go on top of that. No, the people who are talking were complaining about cancel culture and so forth, which is all right. Anyways, but it is a problem. It's a problem in our society. COVID, the election folks, the conspiracy people, and so forth. And so the misinformation, rumors have always been a part of society and things like that. And there are rumors about celebrities that go back pre-internet days that were passed around, word of mouth type situation. The problem now is that misinformation is in everyone's hands. It's easily available because of the internet, because of social media. And that's where misinformation is. It's like the rumors, the false information that has been put out there, and people are using it. They're like, okay, well, I read a report about this, and where did you get it from? I got it off of Facebook. And it's like, well, it's not true. That's not a viable source of information. Oh, well, it was there. So misinformation is a problem in our society and so forth. The rumors and the word of mouth stuff in the past is now easily available and so forth. And then when you get into disinformation, it's when somebody is purposefully creating stuff. And so you know how the former President Trump, he would say fake news all the time, fake news. Does you want to remember that? Oh, he still does. He still says it. He sells fake news, and he does. I don't want to do a Trump impression, but I'm not bringing that up to debate or talk about him. But the reason why I bring it up is fake news was a real thing. In the 2016 election, there were websites that purposely created content that was false, but they knew it would people would click on it and it would get them traffic to their websites. And that was a real thing that occurred. And it was dubbed, the official title was fake news. And so fake news is a real term to explain websites that purposely create fake content to drive traffic to them. And when that story came out and that reporting came out, it found out that most of the fake news sites favored him, the former president, and thus he took that term. He was like, no, that's not fake news. What fake news is people reporting about it. And thus that's why he says fake news. And the reason why I'm starting off this discussion about misinformation and disinformation with the large scale society problem is you have to understand that this stuff that's happening on the society level is going into our group level. And so when we're talking about the basic components of groups, when we're talking the basic techniques, the basic components, the basic roles, when we're talking those basics, I need to let you know that this is going to be a basic problem from here on out in all our group settings, where misinformation and disinformation can affect us. And so that happens all the time now in our society, and groups is where it's hitting us the most. Sometimes the misinformation and disinformation grows from the groups. And so it becomes even worse because of group communication. So this is why it's a fundamental. This, I could bring it up in section 3 or section 4, but I think it's such an important part of it. Any questions on this? Yeah, and you know what's actually killing the Rush there, if people don't know, Russia and Russian companies have invested, and other companies have done it well, has invested in disinformation campaigns across the world. Brexit, our own elections and so forth have been affected by it. And the sanctions in due to Ukraine have affected it as well, where if you looked at the top 10 before the sanctions on Facebook and you looked at it after, you can tell the change. So yeah, so a lot of it does come from places like Russia. It's coming from other places as well, but Russia has really taken it. But that was the overall society part. Now we're talking about the group level, so I asked about it in class, and I'm asked about it again. Does anyone have those kinds of situations that maybe you've seen or you've heard about? Family outing, friends, and so forth, where those rumors or false information about different things have come in and affected us. Anybody? Nobody? The good thing about doing the Zoom class is I don't have to worry about, people interrupting by walking in and so forth. So that's really good. Coming in like the students did the last week. Don't have to worry about that. Yes. No, but we want the students. We want the students to participate on this. We don't want to come in and so forth. No, never mind. I still get a student walking in. All right. And by the way, you can also direct message me, and I'll be more than happy to be your voice. So don't worry about that. Some people have shared direct message with me about the information about the vaccines, and that is probably one of the best examples of how that's affecting us on a group level, on a group level, because it's getting to the point where in the past, I think before, you had your different politics. I'm very different in my politics with my siblings and so forth. But it's getting to the point where we just don't get together anymore because of the situation, especially with one of the siblings. Because my brother and I are complete political opposites, and we are probably the closest. He's probably the closest to me amongst my siblings. But there's another sibling who is where it gets toxic, and that's where we're seeing the misinformation, disinformation affecting us in the group level, where it's becoming. You remember when we learned about the anti-group roles, and we'll go back to it real quick. Oops. I had it. Oh yeah, we are on it. When we had the anti-group roles, where that person, because of misinformation, is not just a blocker and an avoider and the distractor, but and even the recognition seeker. They're all of them. They're all of them. And it becomes where maybe we need to add another anti-group role called toxic, where it is just a poison pill. And so that's part of it. So like that's my example right there. And then some of you, what you might see with the misinformation and disinformation is that people are polarizing to one side or the other. Vaccine, anti-vaccine, right? Vaccine and anti-vaccine. Just FYI for those folks out there who have to deal with the anti-vaccine folks, just remind everybody that everyone pretty much has vaccines already for all these different diseases, and the same science that came up with the vaccine for this thing was the one used for the previous ones. I can't say that one enough. The only people who can go around and say that they're completely anti-vaccine are the Christian Scientists, and there's very few of them left because most of them got some kind of illness due to not having vaccines. So I say Christian Scientists, not Scientologists. They're different groups. So anyways, going back to the idea of groups, I went off on a tangent there. When we're seeing with the misinformation and disinformation, and some of you gave me examples in the chat, where you might have a poison pill, a toxic person come in, and they're souped up by misinformation and disinformation. And then the other thing that happens is the people are polarized in it. And by the way, it's not just politics and so forth. You got to think about the basics. You got to think about racism. You got to think about prejudice. You got to think about those things, because that is also a good example of misinformation and disinformation. We can call that old school misinformation and disinformation. Oh, we can't have them in our group because they don't work. Those people, they don't work. You see how we have a history of having that come in, and then it affecting us on the group level, where people are then ostracized in the group because of the disinformation or misinformation of prejudice and racism. So this has been going around. This is not new, but what's new is how readily available this stuff is, and how readily available the reassurance of it. Like, oh my goodness, there's other people who believe in the same thing, so I could definitely take this into a group setting and say it out loud. That's the big difference, I think, is that people are more are feel like they're free to say this stuff because they go online and there's tons of people who are part of it. So this is an important part. By the way, you guys are getting great examples for your group discussion and your reflect outline, how the basics of groups are affected by misinformation and disinformation. All right. Any other examples? You guys are doing great by the examples. Any other examples? Again, you can direct message me. If you're sharing a computer with somebody else, have them type it or whatever, whatever is the case. If any one of you want to go on camera and share out loud, I want to say students in the course, any students in the course who would like to share out loud or talk, it's not just my voice. I don't have a radio voice, so it's good to hear other people. I don't. Let's see. All right, so the last part of this misinformation, disinformation part. So we talked about how it can come in and can, in the group setting, put a toxic person in there. One or two people are souped up from the misinformation, disinformation, or how it can polarize, have factions inside the group, right? But then there's the also thing about the group dynamic is where the misinformation and disinformation grows from it. And I briefly talked about it when we met last time. And part of the problem that we're having with COVID response and some of these conspiracies and so forth is they're finding people and creating these groups of mutual people, or they're, how do I say this? They're in groups that are more inclined to believe this stuff. And the misinformation, disinformation comes in and it grows in those groups and it spills out into general society. So an example of this is, and I can say is my people, my people, the white folks. I'm trying to see, what is the most whitest thing I have? Oh, my goggles. My goggles I use for skiing. Actually, these are my goggles that when I teach skiing. These are not really good ski goggles, but they're really fun to wear when you're teaching people. So yeah, my ski stuff. I have a water polo ball over there somewhere. I can grab that as well. That is, yes, that is, of course, that is super white. Let's see, for the anime fans, that shelf is all Naruto, German Naruto's right up there, just FYI. All right, so but that's one of the things what we're seeing. So like, for example, the people that believe that 2020's election was stolen. What happens is you get a group of like-minded people that hang out together in a social or even a work setting. Let's say white males in their 30s or 40s. If you looked at me and said, oh, he's talking about his people in his 30s, I say, thank you. I'm in my 40s. But still, you get those people and they're meeting for, let's say, a work-related thing, right? They're on the job. They are, let's say, mid-level. I'm not far from LA County Public Works here in Alhambra. And let's say mid-level meeting, they're talking about they meet every Wednesday at 9:15 to talk about planning a whole, whatever. I'm trying to create a backstory. And every time they're meeting, they are bringing up, oh, did you hear the latest news? And it's something from Facebook or something of that nature, or I saw it on Twitter. And so in a meeting that they're talking about work, they're bringing up this topic. And since more than likely a room full of white males more than likely voted for the former president, then they're more likely to hear that information and take it and like, oh, I didn't think about that. That's good to know, that kind of stuff. And it grows from there and it keeps growing and it keeps growing. And what's happening in our group settings and where it's detrimental is that these folks are either, reinforcing the misinformation or disinformation, or it's growing where it's spreading out. And so why is that important in the group dynamic? Why is it done in the basics of, why is it affecting basic group communication? Why is I'm bringing it up? Well, that government meeting situation I brought up, that current information about still the election stuff of 2020 is about government. It's about whether or not government is working, whether or not the people elected are the people who should be. So if you have a group full of government workers meeting on this level and they're going back and forth and talking about it, how much do you think that might affect their overall goal in fulfilling the task that the government wants? If they have to do a federal that they get money from the federal government to perform a task, and they're sitting around going, oh, well, this is not my federal government. This is not my government. This is not my president. How much do you think that might affect their goals? I'm asking you in the chat. Give me some answers. Do you think it is possibly can have some negative effects on their roles?
I think it would, because they wouldn't be getting anything done. They're kind of like avoiding, or not, they're not accepting what they have to, that is their president, whether they like it or not, and whether trying to compromise and find like a middle ground of what the president needs to do and what they want. They rather just like avoid it.
Yeah. No, that's, yeah, they might get that task like, because they're getting money, because county government, city governments, they get money from the federal government all the time. They might get that money, and like you said, to just like forget about it. Or we don't really do it. And if you think that might be a little bit weird, why am I bringing it up? But think about COVID. Think about what we went through with COVID. Lots of money, lots of grants went out to try to fight this and try to curtail the spread of COVID. And there was governments that and on the local level that didn't, and so didn't follow through. We had our own sheriff of LA County refused to do the stuff that the governor wanted. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because he did it. It wasn't just him. He probably had like-minded people where this information probably came about. And if you want to have a personal connection, how this can affect us, think about how this affects us in our family, in our home, in our friend life. And remember what I said earlier about the old school version of misinformation, disinformation is prejudice. And think about that for a second. How many have I don't want you to, you don't have to say it out loud. You don't have to say whatever, but there might be some of you that maybe had to push somebody out of the friend group because they had misinformation about a certain group, a certain ethnicity or gender or sexual orientation, where you might, the overall goal for the family when you meet with your family is to have a good family function, have a successful family function or a successful family trip. And if this toxic disinformation person comes in or it fractions off, is that goal attainable? Let me ask that. When you have that kind of situation where you have, like I said, the prejudiced person in the friend group, the toxic family member who comes in with a bunch of conspiracies, or when the different groups are faction off. We're not talking about work here. We're not talking about school life. We're talking about group level in your own personal lives. If the group function is to have a good friend outing or a nice family outing, is that obtainable when you have that situation? Yes or no? Let's get some opinions here. No. Okay, some of you said no. Yeah, you can answer in the chat. Some of you think yes, it might still be obtainable. Some say no. Wait, can I do a poll? Let's see if I can do a poll. I can do a poll. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna create a poll. I feel so fancy. No, you can't co-host. All right, I did this one very quickly. All right, let's see if this works. Oop, stop share. All right. All right, I launched the poll. Let's see if this works. Go ahead, wherever it pops up, go ahead, answer a question. Can a family friend outing meet its goal when disinformation gets into the picture? By the way, you answer it correctly. You know, however you see fit. Don't think I'm going to judge you. All right. All right, I'm going to call it right now with the amount of students that are in the class. The majority said no. I think you can still probably find a way, especially if the goal is very important, like it's a health issue or something like that. But maybe a basic friend, you know, or family outing where it's about fun and about festivities and it's less important. All right. Wait. You guys just had a fire alarm?
We just leave room because it's almost always but it's
All right, can you turn it off and just type it? Can you turn off the sound and just type the oh my goodness, because I have my earphones. I have earphones on. I'm like, ah! That's all right. Are you guys gonna take my question is, are you guys gonna take off? Or is it a false alarm? Oh, okay. Okay. So no one's gonna so you guys are gonna stay in place. All right, because not everyone's gonna oh wait, no, I have somebody already. Oh, all right. Some people are taking the alarm seriously. By the way, it's moments like that, me messing around with the Zoom, that you can tell that I used to do children programming when I worked in the public library system. It's officially a false alarm. No, when I worked in politics, I had to supplement my income, and I did it by working in the public library system. And I would do story times and I would do puppet shows. All right, I'm going to end the poll. All right, you guys did great. I really like this poll thing. I should do it more. That's cool. That's really neat. All right. Okay, so this is why this is important, is because and why it's a fundamental thing now, because fundamentally it might misinformation and disinformation in the group setting might become or might be considered an anti-group role now. And like I said, we might need to add the toxic in there. And that's why you're going to hear me talk about it throughout the rest of the semester. And even with your group presentations, if your group meeting situation had a situation where it was, the group situation, the one that you use, you could talk about, oh, how they brought in false information to the meeting to kind of sway a tilted or preferential response, and they use false information or something. So lots of different ways to use this in the future for this class. All right, and then the last thing was disruption and deception communication effects in groups. Disruptive communication, we already talked about with avoidance and did it again. And we talked about, oh, by the way, the specialized groups, that was the nominal group technique, self-managing team and quality circle and participation management. Those were those things. So just FYI, we'll cover that at the end, because that's today's participation. Anyways, so when we're talking about it, when we go to the anti-group role, we already really covered the avoider, blocker, distractor. Those are all disruptors in the group, and so forth. But deceptive communication and its effect is, deceptive communication is a real thing. And I had the privilege of being able to take courses on it and understand it and so forth, and how to catch liars and so forth. I had to give a test. I was at a magnet school yesterday, and the math teacher was like, please be, mindful of giving a test. I'm like, oh, you got the wrong person. The students got the wrong person to try to cheat in front of. And sure enough, I got 3 students, and they were looking at me like, how did you know? I'm like, you guys give off, well, I shouldn't tell you guys this. I shouldn't know how to catch test cheaters, considering you're all students in high school. But there is ways, and I know them. And so, and this deception works in the same way I caught those students, because all the students that I caught yesterday, they had a deceptive way of cheating. One student was looking at somebody else's paper, and the other student was not aware of it, and so forth. Actually, 2 of them were like that. 2 of them were possibly like that. And they, and their deception was that when there was a TA walking around, whenever the TA would walk by, that's when they would look, right? That's when they would look. And one of them was really obvious about it. The other one was a little bit better at it. And so the deception was they were taking the test, but looking whenever they had a chance or opportunity to. That was the deception. That's they were just trying to deceive by acting like they were taking the test normally. The other one that I caught had the friend right next to him, and the friend was better at the subject, so the friend had the paper visible, and so it was harder to catch that person. But there was ways to do it, and I did. And so the deception was twofold, where one person, and by the way, this is true, this happened yesterday, so this is perfect timing. The one person was making sure that the paper was visible. At one point, you know how you have Staples, and they had the page out where it was like people on the next table over could have saw. So, but they were acting like they were taking the test normal. That was the deception. And deceptive communication is, and that's, by the way, those are nonverbal. Everything, none of them were like, hey, what's the answer? No one was doing that. That was all nonverbal communication. But deceptive communication is a part of everyday life now, and it affects us in the group. So let's take it on the personal one-on-one level. How many of you has ever had to deal with anybody who was deceptive in communication? They tried their lines, they tried their little I have the chat open so I can see chat if you want to message me. I think the perfect example of what I mean by deceptive communication, and I'm gonna call out my gender, is men, when it comes to trying to find someone to go out with. All the false the false stuff, like, oh yeah, I could take you out all across the LA, go to the fanciest restaurants. And then they take the person out, and then they're like, oh no, that restaurant was full of reservations, so we're going to Red Lobster. right? So deceptive communication, where have you, has that, you personally have any, you don't want to say it out loud, you don't want to say it out loud in the chat, you could private message me, where maybe a deceptive friend, a deceptive family member, a deceptive student, whoever, who was like, their goal was, the deception was this, but their real goal was this. Give me some examples. I'm tired of talking. Let's go. If I get some students, well, no, I'm talking about other students. Other folks, where they came to you with one, they say this is their goal of communication, but in reality it was another one. So the example I said is a guy saying some deceptive things to get that date. That's an example. Or I don't want to say too many because I don't want to take away your examples. If this is not a point exercise, but something is on the line. If I have enough people give me an example, I'll put my dog on the Zoom cam. She's adorable. Let's go. Let's go. No one wants to see a dog? All you're doing is just giving an example. You can type it in the chat or you can unmute and say it out loud. Wait, is the siren still going on?
No.
Okay. So any of you would like to say, it's just a quick example. Hey, yeah, somebody said that they were going to do this project, but in reality, they were just trying to join us so they can get an easy grade. Come on, give it something like that. Anything, guys. Let's go. Checking on my dog right now. Nobody? All right, so someone in the chat mentioned a teacher who said that they were a very supportive type person, but in reality, when it came to the actual performance, they were not. They were actually they were the opposite of that. That's a good one. Because and by the way, that is a thing in education because we are very much pushing inclusivity. I don't know. Well, don't put them on the spot. But we preach inclusivity and understanding. And in reality, there are people who are like, oh yes, we're every classroom for all, and then when in reality they're still pretty bad. But any others, like any student, so we don't have any debates in class, any students or friends or anything like that where they came with one thing, or maybe how about salespeople like, hey, you really need to buy this is going out of stock, and then you come the next week and there's tons of them. Anybody? Let's go. Let's do this. By the way, I don't normally wear hats, but I just didn't want to do my hair this morning. Oh, and Nigerian prince. Yes, we all know that one. Anybody else? Coming at you with the deception. All right. Well, I guess Bijou will not be making her debut on the. Oh, wait. We got somebody. Ooh, that is no, that is no. All right. So this was to me, so I'm gonna share it, but I'm not gonna say who. But they were talking about a person in their life, friend, family, fellow student who said, "Hey, we needed to borrow money. Can I borrow money? I have no money with me." And they were out doing something, and then they next time they saw him, they had like new stuff. They bought like new stuff. They had new things. They obviously had money. They just got that person to pay for them on something. Ooh. I'm cheap. If someone did that to me, ooh, I would be like taking that Starbucks out of their hand. And they're drinking it. Like it's not even the one I like, but I was still principles. Anybody else? Yeah, that was a good one. I like that one. That was such a good one. Oh wait. I'll show the dog. Anybody else? While I go grab the dog, anyone else go ahead and all right, here we go. All right, this is a good thing to start your day off with this cute, adorable dog. She is, oh my gosh, she's like 14 years old now, like 13, 14. Bijou. She's named after the tailed beast in Naruto. Bijou. But she's, every time they say, oh, Avatar 2 is coming out, it hasn't been like 12 years or 13 years. I got her a year before the first Avatar came out. So she's pretty old and she still runs like crazy. So, all right. Now I saved this for last, and that is the participation for today, which is a group participation. If enough people participate, then everyone gets points, and that includes the people who are not here. So let's go back to share screen. And I said special group types and so forth. And these were defined in the class, in the terms nominal group technique, self-managing teams, participation management, and quality circles. And I told you that we'd cover this more, and we're doing it at the end. And I'm grabbing my book. I ordered a physical copy finally after all this time. Just lazy. Well, I don't like to own more than one copy of a book. So, well, that's not true. I have hardcovers and soft covers are my favorites. So, let's see. So at the end, it defined these different roles, right? Nominal group technique is a process in which individuals work alone in group context to produce a basis for discussion that reflects all group members' viewpoints, right? Then you have self-managing teams, a group of highly skilled workers within a large organization who are completely responsible for producing high quality finish and so forth. Participation management is a leadership style that involves a leader working with other group members to achieve a desired goal. And then finally, I think is the most important one, which is quality circles, a system adopted in many organizations in the 70s and 80s in which groups of employees from the same work area met on a voluntary basis on company time to analyze and solve work-related problems. It's the most important one, not because I think it's the best, but because it's the one that is used the most in the modern workplace. It's management meetings. So those are the four techniques, right? The four special groups situation. Quality circles were the essential. Anytime you watch a movie or a TV commercial and everyone's in a room and they're talking about something, that's a quality circle. Participation management is a leadership style involved the leader working with other group members to achieve a desired goal. It is essentially it's like when you have the group leader teaching you, you're like, okay, how are you doing on your work on this? Okay. And it's like the leadership management. All right. Self-managing team is highly skilled and come together, get the tasks out of the way. And then finally, the nominal group technique, a process where individual work alone and produce basis discussion and reflect all of the group members' viewpoints. The nominal technique is when you have a group and then it's like, okay, then you have your role, you have your role, you have your role, your role. We're going to come back and we're going to push these together. So, right? So those are the four things. Now, the reason why your book at the end introduces you to this is not the basics. Only I think quality circles and well, they're basics in a way. Where like these are basic groups that we see in everyday life. Quality circles are your management meetings, you see in the TVs and movies. A self-managing team is where you get the most skilled to work on something and you know that they're going to be at the task because everybody in there is a computer programmer and it's about computer programming. Participation method, it's like when you get a bunch of people and you get one person in the group who manages them individually and gets them going individually. And then nominal group is when you have everyone has a role in the group and they can work on their own and come back and so forth. So I have this is a two-prong question for discussion. Which ones have you participated in some way as a student at Canoga Park High School? Which of these is the most frequent one for you? Which one, or maybe you've already been in the workforce. Which one have you had experience with? And you need to share it out loud for the 5 points for today. We need a couple students to do that for the 5 points. And then I'm going to ask an overall question after that. Anybody? This is kind of like individual where individuals do it, but not everyone's here today. So I didn't feel comfortable making it individual. Remember, nominal is everyone gets a task, you come together and so forth, which is a basic group in that dynamic. Now, self-managing team, experts on a task that is well known to them. Participation, a leader is going to help them, every member throughout the ordeal. And quality circle, everyone gets together for a work meeting. These are what we see in everyday life in groups. Who has experience with them in some way? Is this a letdown from after the dog? You're like, oh my God, we saw a dog. Why are we gonna do anything else after seeing a dog? Anybody? Remember, when this happens, if no one does anything, this counts for a 0 in participation. So it's a 5 or a 0 for the day. So anybody like to share? You can type it in the chat, and I could be your voice. Some of you might not have a good mic on your computer. I don't know. Someone might just turn on their mic. One person turn on their mic and then the class participates. And the instructor comments don't count and for the participation. Just FYI. Somebody messaged me. All right, some of you worked nominal situations. One of you worked nominal situation where everyone had their own tasks and they come together for the class project, school project. That's a good example. Who else? Unmute and say it out loud or type it in the chat. Let's go, let's go, let's go. We're almost done here. This, by the way, is like the best way for you to remember these groups. If you could find a connection with them in your everyday life, because I'm going to be honest with you, quality circles is not something that pops up in every day. People don't use that term anymore. It's the official term for work meetings, but no one uses, oh, we're going to go meet up in a quality circle. So this is why we're doing it this way, is because I want you to remember this for the midterm. This is, you're going to get at least one question on this stuff. Let's go. Anybody else? Remember, self-managing teams is we have a bunch of experts. Nominal is when the group gets together, but they all have their tasks to do. Participation is when you're in a group, but there's one person who pretty much is in control and helps people. And then quality circle is like everyday work meetings type situations. Anybody else? I don't have one. I had somebody. All right, so this one is public. Julia mentioned quality circles. Yeah, that's who I was thinking about. I'll be honest with you. I was thinking about how you could easily mention quality circles because student leadership is quality circles. Student leaderships and how you guys meet is quality circles. It's when you meet and you put individual tasks and you send them out. That it becomes nominal group technique or participation or self-managing team. But everyday type work meetings, like you're bringing up, is quality circles. So that's a good example. By the way, this is free group discussion, reflection stuff that you guys can mention. Anybody else? I need at least one more person. Give me an example.
I got
everyone.
it.
Go for it.
Can I talk about role conflict?
Say that again.
Is it okay to talk about role conflict? Is that allowed?
Role conflict?
Yeah.
No, we're focused on nominal group, self-managing, participation, and quality circles. So have you participated in any of those type situations?
Yeah, I guess I could do nominal. When at my job, we kind of have roles set up, so we specifically have to do a certain thing to help everyone out. If you kind of mess up on your role, everyone kind of comes down. So it's important to like stick to that group work.
That's an excellent example. That's really good nominal group technique where everyone has a task at the work. Where do you work again?
I work at a sushi bar.
There you go. So everyone has a task. You got to make sure, and that's an excellent example because restaurant work is nominal group technique because the overall goal for the group that day, the work shift. If the person who's washing dishes doesn't do their job, you don't have dishes for the person who's bringing them out. If you don't have dishes for them bringing it out, then the people who are the wait staff is not being able to get the people going in and off the tables. And then of course the cooks don't have things. So that is nominal. So excellent example. And someone else did message me. Yeah, someone talked about a participation management where once you had your place to go and so forth, you were still the person in charge and so forth. They had control over the situation and making sure they were doing their tasks. So you guys are doing great, and that's the best way for you guys to make for you guys to remember this stuff. So my last question is, which one is the best? Which one of these is probably the best to get something done? Is it best to have the group come together and they take tasks and they come back and make sure the role is done with nominal? Is it, you try to get as many experts and create specialized groups for the field with self-managing team? Is it best to have a group, but there's one person really in charge and make sure everyone does their part? Or is it best just to throw people into a group and have them do the task and not try to specialize it, or try to have something different, just to have a regular work meeting with the quality circle? Which one is best? Let's have opinions here. Opinions. You just say which one you think is best, and just maybe give a quick thing on why. Let's try to unmute. Let's hear some voices. While you're coming up with your opinion, I just want to point out that is my hat from my Marine Corps days. That's my Marine Corps dress blue cover. Let's see. I never got a class ring, but I did get one for my Marine Corps. So that's graduating boot camp. That's how important this is. I would show you my dog tags, but it has my social security number on it. So no. All right. Everyone anybody have an opinion? Which one you think is best? How about you just type it in the chat? Just choose one and type it in the chat. Let's go. I want opinions here. I'm not going to tell you what games I'm playing on the Switch or anything like that. Let's get opinions here. Nominal, group technique, self-managing team, participation management, or so forth. By the way, I'm recording this. It'll be on my YouTube channel. Apartment channel.
I'll go again. I think if everyone involved knows what they're doing and what important the role is, I think nominal group technique would be best. If you're kind of working with like amateurs, I think self-managing would be best, because as a manager position, you would know who has more what it takes for a certain role. So you kind of like move them around and just be like, okay, this will work for now.
I'm gonna just correct it a little bit, but I absolutely love the sharing, and that was awesome. Especially you knocked a nominal group technique out of the park. The second one is more participation management, but I completely understand what you mean, where you need somebody on task. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So that's an excellent sharing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. Self-managing team is more of the experts. You get the experts together, and you know that they're going to be able to do it because they're experts on it. Anybody else have an opinion? Let's go. I'm watching the clock. Anybody else? All right, I'm still going to give 5 points to everyone. The person who came in at the end and gave the opinion saved it for everybody else. So make sure in class you thank Sergio there for doing that and so forth. And I know you guys want to take off, and oh yeah, look, he wants to take off again. You can't have Harry Potter do anything, man. He just always wants to be the center of attention. Anyways, the thing is, you guys did great on this and so forth. Let me get out of stop share. Any questions, comments, concerns about what we covered today? You guys have been doing that in the chat, which I appreciate and so forth, but just going to save it at the end. And no, you're not going to ask me about, I'll answer the Switch question at the end, but after I turn off the recording, but any class related stuff. So just a reminder, and I'm recording this for everybody. If you missed out on any part of group discussion 1, make sure you do group discussion 2, because I'll let you go back and make it up, but you need to get group discussion 2 done. All right. Post your initial response, put an initial post on there and reply to somebody else. That's the 2 things you have to do. You got to put your initial post, 3 to 5 sentences, and then reply to somebody else and use the terms and the concepts from the sections for that. All right. And then reflection outline. By the way, you had a couple weeks on these. Reflection outline is due today. Make sure you turn that in and so forth. Both reflection outline 1 and 2 are still open for submission. So get those done. And then we have midterms next week. On Monday, you're going to get an announcement on what's been posted and so forth. All right. Any questions? All right. All right. I'm going to turn off the recording.